Okay, thanks a million again.
Yeah, we can do the sheriff. On the end? Yeah, two sheriffs, the auditor, the commissioners, and prosecuting attorney. Two sheriffs.
Are we doing this?
Sheriff is the way you sheet.
Oh, that's okay. You can take your seat. Except I don't think I will answer your question. My question I think you're a lot better than your question.
I'll make it scoot over just one and or just have Aaron sit here and then I'll have Sally sit there. There you go. Okay, so
You can leave your hat.
yeah, just how we're gonna do it is we're gonna have you guys introduce each other or introduce yourselves. You've got three, yeah, introduce each other. That'd be interesting. You get 3 minutes to introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about yourself, and then we're gonna go in order of the sheriff, the auditor, the commissioner, and the prosecuting attorney. So you guys are welcome. Whoever is not, find yourselves a seat in the, on the side or whatever. We'll do the sheriffs and do the questions, move from there, and then the next group.
Oh.
I know it wasn't my idea.
So we're introducing ourselves all together,
Yeah.
and then we leave and just
You guys
leave.
are welcome if you want to stay here through the whole entire thing. It's fine with us. That was but there was suggestions of everybody just doing it. So, what's the consensus? What's the consensus? Do you all want to stay up there? Do you all want to go? You're staying for the whole thing?
But
You wanna
I-
Okay. So they all want to just stay up here? Not. Okay, so then there's going to be a timer. You each get 2 minutes per question. Nora will have the 20-second card. At 20 seconds, she'll wave it, and then the red one means you're out of time. You're done. So we'll have questions from the audience that I'll be asking, and we'll try to go in office. Anybody have questions? Okay. Yes. Yeah, go ahead and pass that one, and I'll start with this one, and then I'll kind of. And then there is a power button on. There it is. So I'm going to go ahead and start. My name is Monica Rawson, and I'm going to be kind of facilitating this tonight. I'd like everybody to stand for the flag salute, please. this is gonna work. We've set all of our candidates up into the positions that they're running for. They will introduce themselves, they will get 3 minutes to do so, then they will move on. We will have questions from the audience. There's cards that everybody got, I think, as they came in. You can ask questions on the cards and bring them up, and we'll be asking the candidates those questions. They'll get 2 minutes to answer those questions. Also, you can help yourselves to refreshments throughout the time. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the sheriff's candidates and let them introduce themselves, and we'll go down the line.
Working? Yep. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Steve Brown. A little bit about myself. I was born in Omak, Washington. I've lived here all of my life except for 1 year. I'm 46 years old. I went to school and graduated in Okanogan. A year after I graduated, I spent a year in the oil fields in California. I decided I didn't like California very much and returned back home. I went to college. I started my college career at Big Bend in Moses Lake. I played college baseball there for a year. I ended up quitting college after the first year. My dad got into a logging accident. So I quit college and I returned home to get a job so I could support my mom and dad. I got a job in Twisp at the Forest Service. I was a firefighter there for 5 years until the Twisp and Winthrop Ranger districts combined. And then I moved to the Winthrop Ranger district for 2 years. After 7 years of fighting fire, we started with a 20-man crew and we were down to about 7 people. So I decided to change careers. I went back to college. I ended up getting a degree in wildlife and parks and recreation. My goal was to be a game warden. I love to fish and hunt and love the outdoors, so that's what I wanted to do. I decided that that wasn't going to be the route I could take. After talking to John Danielson, he was the only game warden in this county at the time, and told me that unless he died or retired, I wasn't getting a job. So John didn't die and John didn't retire, so I returned to school again. And I got a degree in law enforcement, in criminal justice. And so when I got out of college, I applied at every place I could apply. Washington State Patrol, Idaho State Patrol, the county, the tribe, everywhere. The tribe picked me up about 2 days after I put my application in. So I went there and I tested for them. I was hired in 1999 and I worked patrol for the tribe for 2 years. In 2001, I was assigned to the drug task force by the tribe. In mid-2000, I was assigned to the drug task force. I was hired full-time as a detective. Since that time, I've spent most of my career with the drug task force in Okanogan, which is a multi-jurisdictional drug task force. I'll make it quick. And from 2001 till about 2015, I was a detective, a supervisor, and the commander of the drug task force. 3.5 years ago, I was offered the position by the sheriff as the chief criminal deputy with the sheriff's office. I currently oversee the sergeants and the deputies within the sheriff's office, and still commander of the drug task force. Thank you.
As Steve said, thank you all for coming tonight. I am Tony Hawley. I'm running for the office of sheriff. I graduated from Okanogan High School. I was raised in Okanogan on a small cattle ranch, so I learned to work at a young age. We have a small ranch. We didn't have a huge thing going on, but it was enough to where I learned to take care of other things that were the important thing of running the ranch. After high school, I was not the greatest student, so I decided it was time for me to go to something else to figure out what I want to do with my life, take a little bit of time there. So I joined the Marine Corps. I earned the rank of corporal while I was in the Marine Corps. I served in Somalia. I led several young men along the way in our artillery battery. After 4 years in the Marine Corps, I decided it was time for me to come home. I didn't want to just be a nomadic person. I wanted to raise a family in a static place, and it was back here home in Okanogan County. So I came back home, started my family, married, had 3 children, all of which were attending the Okanogan High School, or Okanogan school system. In 1995, I was hired into the jail. I got out of the Marine Corps in 94. I got hired into jail in 95. I worked in there for almost 2 years. Decided I didn't want to go to jail every day. looked like they were having more fun out on the street. So I moved out to work in patrol in 1996. I worked patrol as a patrol deputy for the city of Okanogan until about 2000, where I moved out to the Mid-Valley area. From that area, was just doing general patrol. Whatever calls came in, that's the ones we investigated, whether it was a barking dog, or it was a burglary, or a sex offense, or whatever it was. There's a whole gamut of things that, whatever the call is, that's what we do as deputies, is we investigate those and from start to finish, take them all the way through the court. About 2001, I moved into traffic specialization, collision investigations, serious fatalities, serious collisions, fatality investigations, impaired driving. Moved myself up to being a collision reconstructionist, which is, I was assigned to do a duty, and the way I go about things is I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. So the office was okay with me having some basic collision investigation. I sought more and more so that I can do it at the best ability that's available. So I ended up being a collision reconstructionist, which I still am today. And I went back to patrol in 2009, and then was promoted to sergeant in 2012. Moved on from that, or I'm still in that position right now as a sergeant. I oversee our field training office program. I am the SWAT team commander for the sheriff's office. I've been on the SWAT team since 2003. I'm running for sheriff because I want to see some changes, and I really want to see a working administration, and we're getting out on the road and getting out to see people, not just staying in the office and dealing with that part of it as well. I want to be a more rounded sheriff and not just taking care of administrative duties. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. My name is Carrie Hall. I'm running for County Auditor. I was raised in Okanogan, and I graduated from Okanogan High School in 1988. And I've been married for 23 years to my husband, Roy. I have 19 years of high-level finance and accounting experience, including the overseeing of general ledger, accounts payable, payroll. I supervised as little as 2 and as many as 23 employees at one time. I administered over 23 grants, and I have extensive experience in human resources and employee law. The auditor is a job that I get asked a lot what we do. The auditor is responsible for a lot of different duties. Finance, vehicle licensing, reporting, elections, and not everybody really understands what that means. Basically, we audit how the county spends your taxpayer dollars and ensures that those dollars are being spent the way the laws and regulations allow for it. We do recording of deeds, marriage licenses, which is the best part of recording, is issuing marriage licenses. We issue vehicle tabs and do titles, and of course we oversee all the elections process. I am running for auditor because I felt like it was a natural progression, and with my experience and knowledge, I feel like it makes me uniquely qualified for the role. I have worked not only in finance, I currently work as the finance manager in the auditor's office. I've been there 3 years. So I'm responsible for overseeing all of the finance in the auditor's office. I have also cross-trained into recording and voters registration, and I'm also certified in licensing, which I just got 2 months ago. So thank you very much.
Hello and good evening. I'm Randy Gates. I'm running for Okanogan County Auditor. I was born and raised in Omak. My father, Rudolph Gates, was born in Chesaw at the family lumber mill. My mom, Bonnie Townsend, was born on the family ranch in Johnson Creek, which is on the way to Concanelli. So my earliest days was spent in an apple bin, being raised by my mom, who was picking apples at the time, and as I was transferred from place to place in this apple bin by the orchardist. So I have an extensive background in agriculture and customer service. I've been a supervisor and manager in almost every position I've held in the past 30 years, supervising as many as 15 to 20 employees. I love mathematics. I graduated from Womack High School in 1985 with honors. I attended Western Washington University with the pursuit of business. That didn't work out, just wasn't ready for school at that time. Have been very active in the community, helped with the River Valley Soccer Club where I served as president, referee coordinator. A lot of the youth really loved me and look forward to spending time with me. One of the reasons why I decided to run for Okanogan County Auditor is I spent 10 years as a licensing supervisor. During those 10 years, I also got experience working with elections and recording, not in a daily basis, but just when needed and asked to come and support and help. And so I got some exposure to that as well. I believe the auditor being such an important position for us here in Okanogan County, that we need somebody that does not have ties with the current treasurer or the commissioners. We need an independent person who's going to evaluate and look at the books for us, and that's going to take to heart Okanogan County and try to develop and bring Okanogan County into the future. I've come down to Brewster quite a bit recently. I'm very proud of Brewster. It's one of our bright spots in the area. They bring a lot of money to the economy. I see it almost on a daily basis with some of the migrant workers coming. And so we need to grow and continue to see prosperous areas like Brewster, and we need to make sure that we regulate and watch these things. And we need somebody who's going to use social media and provide you with blogs and updates on the current situation and put that information out there so you can see it. So we need to be involved. And I want to be involved, and I want to help you, and I want to make the auditor's office better. I was asked by many people to run just because customer service was falling down to a real low place there where people don't feel like they are wanted there. And I will make it so that as soon as you walk through the door, you'll be greeted, and when you leave there, you will feel like we are working for you and trying to help you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jim Destro, incumbent Commissioner, District 3. I've been a county commissioner for 8 years. I'd like to introduce my wife, who is my largest fan, Patty, if you're here with me tonight. I was born in Omak, Washington in May 25th, 1948. My dad drove through 2.5 feet of water to get my mom to the hospital so I could be born. So I've been through the flood of 48, the flood of 72, and the flood of 18. I guess all three. And I don't know the flood record before 48. So anyway, went to grade school in Riverside, Washington, and high school in Omak, Washington, 2 years at Wenatchee Valley College in Wenatchee, and 2 years at Eastern Washington State College at Cheney. At 16 years old, I went for work for the DNR, and a couple years later, I started smoke jumping and was off to college. So I stayed from 67 to 73 as a smoke jumper in Winthrop, Washington until I came out of college. I worked 1 more year on the Concanelli Ranger District as a range management officer, the GS7 position. And there was talk about merging the Concanelli District with the Tenasket District about that time, and they didn't want to move to Oregon or New Mexico or Colorado, so I bought a logging truck, and I was in the trucking business for 46 years. At one time I had 55 lumber trucks, 10 chip trucks, and 10 heavy haul trucks, and 120 truck drivers. You're their banker, you're their mentor, you're listen to all their problems, you loan them money, and anyway, truck drivers are a different group of people to have to deal with. But I did that for 46 years. I also have bought and sold heavy machinery for 43 years. Still do that currently, even though I'm employed by the county. And I've been a pilot, private pilot for 45 years. So Okanogan County, you know, is my home. I've told people that's where I was born and that's where I'm going to die. I've been in every corner of Okanogan County. I've been down the Devil's Staircase, up the Golden Stairway, Chichewatine, Monument 83, jumped a fire on the only glacier in Okanogan County, which is Silver Star up in Winthrop. And I think it's just important to know your county geographically, and thank you for being here tonight.
I'm Sally Bull. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Sally Bull. I'm running for County Commissioner for District 3, same as Jim Detro here. I come from 4 generations of people that lived in the north end of the county. They homesteaded in Chililican Valley and also started the Ellisford Brethren Churches there at Ellisford and Whitestone and Loomis. I grew up in Orville and raised my kids in Tenasket. We all lived on a small farm, and so we had bummer lambs in the house and a pet horse that you could bring in the house too if mom doesn't find out. I'd like to tell people that I'm a grandma, and I have a big caring concern about the next generations in this valley, in this county. I want our kids and our grandkids to be successful and to be able to raise their families here. And they need to have work. They need to have a place to stay. And so this is for a poverty county. We need to have more jobs for kids here. I came back from Alaska after being there for 4 years. I had a felting business for 10, and it got me into newspapers and fancy arts and craft shows and galleries throughout the Northwest. I used that experience to be on the Orville Scholarship Foundation and help them increase their funding, investments, their fundraising events. And I also joined the library and community board to help them with their plans, which they had planned on for 30 years to remodel the building. People would fight over the plans, meeting after meeting. And when I became president, I guided them through discussions on firming up the plans, decide what we could afford to do, what we could do, what we have to do. And we now have a terrific building. It's an old craftsman style, 102 years, updated completely throughout. And NCRL invested another $20,000 in there for the technology update. So it's a great place for the whole town. People there learned with the city and the clubs that they could work together. So I've had experience with budgets, negotiating with people, ADA expectations in buildings, and I'm organized, dedicated, and want to work for you. I think you need new energy in this county.
Good evening. I'm Brandon Platter. I'm the current county prosecutor. First and foremost, I love what I do. I became a prosecutor to help people, to help victims, to help survivors of domestic violence, to help kids, and to hold people accountable. And I get to do that every single day. I've been in the prosecutor's office for about 5 years. I've prosecuted every level of offense, from DUIs to violent assaults to child sex offenses to homicides, basically everything that you can think of. I think I have a well-balanced experience. I have a well-balanced sense of justice. Those higher offenses, they deserve aggressive prosecution, and that's what I do. Violent offenders, sex offenders, people who commit heinous crimes, they need to be sent to prison. But I recognize that a lot of our lower level offenses, our low property crimes, they're the result of chemical dependency and mental illness. And while my focus will always be on victims and public safety and accountability, if we can get that person treatment within the case, then we all win. Because we can reduce recidivism, we can rehabilitate people. But a necessary part of rehabilitation is accountability. And I think those are the qualities that a prosecutor needs. It's It's not to focus on defendants, it's not to focus on their rights. We'll make sure they have all the rights. But a prosecutor's job is to protect the public. It's to stand up for victims, to hold people accountable. And that's what I did. I've established a very good relationship with law enforcement. I'm on call 24/7. I get calls in the middle of the night, weekends, holidays from law enforcement. Some people in this room have called me in the middle of the night, and I'm always available. I've gotten endorsements from OMAC Chief Jeff Copeland, Orville Chief Todd Hill, Fish and Wildlife Sergeant Dan Christensen, the OMAC Police Officers Teamsters Union unanimously voted to endorse me, and Natalie Carricker locally have all endorsed me because they see firsthand what I do in this office, and they have the concern about what this county will be if I don't stay in office. I'm familiar with the budget. Our county spent over $50,000 a year on outside counsel on land use civil cases. When I took over in 2017, I canceled that contract, entered a new contract, and we've spent only about $5,500 since November of 2017. So over $40,000 a year savings to the taxpayer. I believe in transparency. I'm not a politician. I don't play political games. I do my job. While others are out playing political games, I'm at work doing my job, protecting you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arian Noma, and I want to thank you for coming out tonight, and thank the American Legion for hosting this. I've been practicing law going on my 14th year. I'm licensed in the state of Maryland, I'm licensed in DC, and I'm licensed in Washington. I've had the unique experience of practicing law in all three places. I cut my teeth as a prosecutor in Baltimore, Maryland, and if you don't know about Baltimore, Maryland, I won't waste your time. Just watch The Wire. You'll see exactly what I did. In 2005, there's a show that came out, The Wire. Go watch that. It's exactly what we did. That show is true to life. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, it's common sense. If someone commits a murder, if someone commits arson, if someone rapes someone, there's not many ways to exercise discretion as a prosecutor. The person has to be punished. They have to be held accountable. That's common sense. But here's the problem. Washington has been studying this. The Justice Center for the Council of the State Government has indicated that by 2021, just to get from approximately 1,700 prisoners in the whole state to about 1,800, it's going to cost us as taxpayers $291 million. If that trend continues, by 2032, it'll cost another $380 million. That's $500 billion in tax money for roughly 11 to 3,000 more beds. We need to reform nationwide the way we prosecute. Doesn't mean that you're holding hands with defendants. But what it does mean is that you take a different approach. One, different metrics for success. In every prosecutor's office, including the one that the office I'm running for, I promise you the way they measure success at this point, their metric that they use is convictions. You need to change your metric. I think the proper metric should be recidivism. How many people are coming back? If they're not coming back, then you're doing something right. If they're coming back, it's costing more money and you're not doing it right. So, how do you do that? Well, four-prong approach. You surge, just like we do with the military, you ferret out aggressive techniques and policies to get the violent criminals off the street. Absolutely. Second approach, for any non-violent, low-level offenders, you find different ways to rehabilitate them other than incarceration. Incarceration is about rehabilitating, not just punishing. Thank you.
oh, they're not in my district. But now that we're in the primary, you are going to be voting for them. So you have to remember that your vote will count towards them. And so you need to pay attention and listen to that tonight as well. And then we have 3 beautiful ladies sitting back there, and they're part of our county. And so I'd like them to stand up and introduce themselves. Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm Gloria Thomas, the Seated County Auditor.
I'm Leah McCormick, the Okanogan County Treasurer, and I'm running for my 4th term this year and opposed. That's why I'm not seated up there.
And I'm Charlene Grooms, the county clerk, and 3rd term.
Great. Anybody else who is running for any office within Washington State here? No? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out now with the questions for the sheriffs, and then we'll move forward. The candidates have stated that they kind of just want to be seated. We were going to let them, if they weren't being asked questions, to move away from the table, but at this point they've decided they all want to just kind of stay here. So we're going to do that. You're welcome again to coffee and water. Also, if you have not gotten a card and you have a question for a candidate, please fill it out and bring it up here. We'd like to know what you want, what your questions are for these candidates. This is the information that's going to help you decide who you feel is the best candidate for this. And what better place to do it is when they are right in front of you. So we're going to start with Sheriff. Okay, so Steve, you get to go first. Okay, so how will you strengthen the Okanogan County Emergency Management Support and System? And just a reminder, you get 2 minutes.
Okay. So currently, right now, the emergency management system is not under the sheriff's office. It's away from the sheriff's office. We used to have control of that. I prefer the way it is now. I prefer that we have one person in charge of that, which is Mo Goodall currently right now. And the way that we can strengthen the emergency management system is just continued cooperation with emergency management. It's communication and cooperation. If you remember the big fires, everybody remembers the big fires of 2014 and 2015. As law enforcement officers, we always struggled with the level 1, level 2, and level 3. You're going in there to give a level 2, then you're going back in there again a day later, or maybe even an hour later for a level 1, then they send you back in for a level 3. This year when they had the fires up in Twisp, I attended one of those meetings, which was important. It was important with communication between emergency management, Forest Service, the firefighters, and law enforcement. And so that they understood that when law enforcement goes in, we're going in at their request. They are telling us what they want done. We go in and give one and one warning only. Yes, if it was an emergency situation and somebody's life was in danger, we would go back again. But we don't want to have to continue to try to reach 2,000 residents or even 150 residents in one area 4 different times in a day. So the answer to the question is just better communication between us, emergency management, and the entire system.
Okay, as far as the emergency management system, I was with the sheriff's office, obviously, when it was under the umbrella of the sheriff's office, and we had an in-house person that was taking care of those things. It did create a little bit of issues as far as who was really in charge of things, as far as if it was sheriff's office or if it was the emergency manager under the sheriff's office, and what those roles were. I, like Steve, prefer the system that we have now. Having Mo Goodall that's outside our office, or whoever the emergency manager is for the county, outside of our office, he's running his duties. He's taking care of all those things. He has somebody that's dedicated to look into the information, collect the data, and then push that data out to us. It's the information sharing, the communication that needs to improve. A lot of that doesn't make it down to the deputies. Even though we have somebody attend a meeting, if it doesn't make it down to the deputies, it's really not useful information because those that are going to do the notifications aren't aware of what's being said at these meetings. If it's not being passed down, we can't obviously have the entire sheriff's office attend the meeting due to budgets and several other reasons. We have calls to attend. I do like that we reduced a little bit of our activity. We weren't going back and forth to these houses like we did in 14 and 15. It does seem that a lot of those changes have happened under the direction of the current manager. So that's been very helpful to the sheriff's office and allowing us to tend to other things. Because just because there's a large fire, other things still are occurring. There's other crimes that are occurring in the county that we have to attend to, and we don't have the staffing to keep going back and forth, back and forth. So it is the communication and then the information sharing that needs to strengthen it and get all the way through the entire department. So we're getting that information out to the road deputies who are actually going and knocking on these doors.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, this is kind of our first time us as a group doing this, so we're gonna kind of do something unconventional. Now we're gonna do a question for the auditors. Okay, what do you think is the most important job duty of the auditor? And Carrie, you can start.
I think the most important job duty of the auditor is to audit. That sounds simple, but it is to audit, to review the expenditures that are coming through, ensuring that the taxpayer dollars are being spent appropriately and according to regulation.
I also agree. We need to audit our books. We need independent voice, an independent look. We need somebody who's going to investigate, who's going to question, who's going to ask those kind of questions that we as residents need to know. We also need somebody who's going to put that information out where we can see it, so we as residents can also judge how our county is doing. So it is very important that we have an auditor that follows the rules and that is willing to ask those tough questions, to say, how did you come up with that number? Where did you get that information? We need to investigate. We need to come down to a response, and then we need to share that with our residents so everybody who's living in this area, who has ownership to this county, can see those results.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to the county commissioners. And so, the question for both of you is, we have had problems in the South County with road vacations in favor of a large corporate landowner, which takes away access to public land and escape routes during emergencies. How do you stand on this issue?
Well, I was the dissenting vote on Three Devils Road because I chose to go with the hearings examiner's choice. It was kind of a real toss-up for me, but the current litigation that's going on is already being litigated, and we're in court, and we have pressure from groups that are trying to drag us as county commissioners into that litigation. It's kind of funny, the same people that are trying to drag us into that litigation are the people that shoot our rear ends for doing too much litigation. So I think the court's going to decide on this particular issue, I think, that you're talking about. But road vacation is a necessary process in Okanogan County as we have attrition. And that is because we're responsible to the CRAP board, and that's the County Roads Administration Board, and they're the ones that determine how many road miles that we have, and that's where they determine how much revenue we get from road tax or gasoline tax or whatever that comes back to the county. So they push us all the time to keep an accurate record. And we went through this and have been going through this process for the past 4 years. First time that the road log of 1955 has actually been gone through and revamped. So we do have some more vacations coming up. I think there's 6 on the reservation that were never anybody's jurisdiction. So it makes it kind of tough, you know, if you don't have a right of way or if you don't have a deed, how do you vacate something that you don't have? So that's going to be an interesting one. We have some that are just obvious roads. The one that runs into the river down here, it was flooded with a Wells pool. That one will be fairly simple. But it's an ongoing process. It works all the time. Thank you.
Okay, there's RCWs that cover how roads are vacated. And it has to do with, if it's a positive thing for the public, it has to be a benefit in order to close the road. I know we have more than 1,300 miles of county roads. Some of them aren't really maintained, but there's certain rules you have to go by. And that is, it has to be a benefit to the public in order to close the road. Or people have to sign off that live along the road and want it closed. Problem I see is if a road goes through private property and ends up in the Forest Service ground, did the Forest Service sign off and decide to have it closed off? Some of that is school ground, and so does that mean it doesn't ever get logged again? You're losing money doing that. And then there's another one that's in the RCWs, and that is compensation to the county if they close it. And so there has to be a value put on the road, and whoever petitions to have it closed has to pay it. I just want to go by the RCWs.
Okay, so this is for the prosecuting attorneys, and excuse me, because this one's a little hard to read. Can you define prosecutorial discretion in using discretion? How do you ensure that laws are applied fairly without preferential treatment or favoritism?
When it comes to prosecutorial discretion, I think there's probably two different views of it between myself and Mr. Noma. I think it's something that's applied very restrictively. It doesn't mean that we're going to choose to prosecute this person or that person. We don't prosecute people necessarily, we prosecute actions. And the way that we maintain our consistency is to maintain that same level. Nobody gets preferential treatment. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter who your family is, it doesn't matter who you know. I have prosecuted numerous people, including families of law enforcement. It does not matter who you are. We charge the crime. And we frankly charge all crimes that are reasonable to charge, the crimes themselves. We may have situations where we don't have enough evidence, or there's a victim who's not necessarily cooperating. Those are the times that we use prosecutorial discretion. Because it's one thing to have a cooperating victim, it's something else to have somebody who is a victim, and we don't need the victim's permission to charge, but it makes it more difficult. So we have discretion to say, okay, under these circumstances, we're not going to charge. We've got resource issues. We've made decisions within the office, I've made some myself, based on the resources that we have. We don't charge certain types of crimes under some circumstances. We don't charge a lot of drug paraphernalia cases under a certain set of circumstances because we frankly don't have the resources to. And that's our office and the state crime lab. So when we're talking about discretion, it doesn't mean we're going to pick and choose who we are going to prosecute. We prosecute everybody evenly. But we use discretion to say, well, for whatever reason, this case can't go forward. I declined the case the other day because it would be more detrimental to the victim to charge than to actually go forward.
You run a Google search, prosecutorial discretion, just put RCW, it'll take you right to Washington stuff, it'll bring you to codes, bring you to law. The law says that there's a number of different times that a prosecutor can exercise discretion. One of them is if there's no benefit to the public by going forward with the prosecution, you can divert the case. Here's another law. Everybody put into Google Senate Bill 6550. June 7, 2018, it became law. It's the law. The law right now says in juvenile cases, if it's not a violent offense, or it's not a murder, something serious that you have to charge, the rules say you have to charge it. Common sense on the legislature's part, there's serious crimes. Everything else, even felonies, non-violent felonies, and kids with records, we're now told, the prosecutors are told and encouraged to divert the case. So what is discretion? Discretion is finding other ways to rehabilitate other than a jail. Restorative justice programs, cognitive behavioral therapy, removing children from bad environments, changing their thinking and changing their peers. This all works, and it's still justice, and the law allows a prosecutor to do it. In fact, it says it encourages. When it comes to juvenile justice, SB 655, it's in effect, it is a law. Discretion is the ability to use prudent, wise judgment when to prosecute and make someone punished by jail and prison, or find an alternative means which is cheaper and produces a productive citizen and stops recidivism.
Okay, we'll start with you, Tony, this time. How will you as a sheriff assure funding for county reduction of drugs and safety for citizens?
The budget is always a huge issue. It's come up several times. A lot of it's already allocated to where it's going to go. As far as drug funding, the drug task force is currently funded through a federal grant called the Burns Grant. Large part of that is right now tied up. We're not getting that funding into our office. That's what's really hindering our drug task force right now. Once that litigation gets done, hopefully that funding will start flowing back in, and the drug task force can start being refunded. Other ways of getting some things going right now that I've thought about is sending some deputies over to assist, like some of the other cities are, and allow them to assist and also learn so that they can see on a regular basis what they can do daily while they're doing their normal patrols, what they're going to come across, have a better understanding of where our high drug areas are inside the county, and also recognize things when they make those contacts that they may not recognize now because they haven't had the training or the experience that maybe a 20-year deputy does when we have a 1 or 2 year deputy that hasn't been exposed to those things, and things might not slip by them as well. So we're utilizing the funding that we currently have now, but just training our deputies to be more aware of where the drug problems are at and what they can do in order to investigate and become an asset to assist our drug task force and further some cases and doing search warrants, taking on those cases by themselves and heading those things out and using their training and their ability to lead our agency and help within the community to battle the drugs that are going on right now. It may not necessarily be a funding issue, just more of a training issue to keep our deputies aware of they're being seen when they make a traffic stop, when they make a contact, when they go into a house, for whatever it is, just so they're more aware of what's going on around them and using that training to then start a case.
So when you talk about funding for the drug task force is a multi-jurisdictional drug task force with both Okanogan and Perry County. And so, just a correction, there is no funding this year. The drug task force received $0 this year from the Department of Justice. We received $21,000 carryover from the state that has nothing to do with the DOJ grant. And so our budget for this year that we received from DOJ, and historically over the years is what we used to survive on, is $0. And so in order to fund the task force, we as the sheriff's office and we as the county have to put pressure on cities. So cities don't have the ability to do their own investigations. They don't develop informants. They don't do long-term investigations, 4 months, 6 months, a year-long investigations. They don't have the ability to go out and buy a kilo of cocaine. They don't even have the ability to go out and buy an ounce of heroin. And so those cases are done by the drug task force. So currently our makeup is 1 full-time deputy that's assigned to the drug task force. We have 1 full-time border patrol agent. We have a half-time employee from the city of Omak and a 1-day-a-week employee from the city of Brewster. And the reality is that's not enough. And so there is a participation fee that the cities pay, and they pay based on population. And again, that's not enough. So the participation fee that we receive from the city of Omak for a full year is, let's say, $5,000. If you purchase heroin by the point out on the street, heroin costs $6,650 for an ounce. So we have to put pressure on those cities. And you have to be realistic about it. You have to tell them. You either put somebody into the drug task force on a rotational basis, or we're not going to be able to supply that kind of investigation for you in your city. That's reality. The county can no longer continue to do this for every city. Thank you.
I have two cards here. I'm going to kind of try to combine these. They're kind of the same answer or same question, and it's for both candidates. It says, what are the top 3 functions of the county auditor? Explain your experience with each one. And this one asks, how often do you cover in these areas? So if you're working within the county auditor's office, do you rotate, do you cross-train? I believe that's kind of what it's saying. That's how I'm understanding the question.
Okay, first off, I encourage anybody that's ever wanted to run for politics to please run. It's quite entertaining to be the one being looked at out here, so I really appreciate everybody coming out and participating. Of course, we've already discussed that auditing of the books is most important for finances. I don't have a lot of extensive experience other than the fact that I have a great background in math and have taken accounting classes. So I do understand the process of accounting, and I do know what kind of questions I need to ask to make sure for our county residents that the books are being balanced and the folks that are in charge of doing those things handle those things. Next off would probably be the election process. Elections are our rights, and they are what makes this country great. Having fair and just elections are very important. I have seen some experiences with the election process. I've witnessed the canvas boards and stuff like that. I've not been directly involved, but after working 10 years in the auditor's office, I have witnessed these things as well. And then the third thing would be, of course, following rules and regulations. There's a lot of rules and regulations involved. There's rules indicating how to become certified for licensing, which can take up to 58 weeks to do so. And that's at full-time duties, by the way. There's also rules and regulations for elections and for the whole process of recording marriage licenses and everything. So we need somebody that we can rely on that's going to follow the rules, that's going to be there for us. As for where I'm coming from, I'm pretty proud to indicate that from the auditor's office in licensing, our sitting auditor has come from licensing, and our sitting chief deputy of the courts is from licensing as well. So I believe there's a wealth of experience that you get by working in the auditor's office, and I plan to work for you and help you. Thank you.
So I believe the 3 top major duties of the auditor, one we've already talked about, which is the safeguarding of the use of public funds. I feel that is the #1 reason the auditors are there. The second one, I believe, is elections, because the auditor is responsible for overseeing the process under the rules and regulations set by the state. I believe the third one is reporting, because we in the recording office are required to record important documents. We have documents going clear back into the 1800s. That's pretty important history. That's what the auditor preserves for us, the taxpayer dollars. I personally work in licensing almost every day. Probably would say every day. I work in recording or cross-train over into recording. Before I started in licensing, I was doing that almost on a daily basis, and now it's more just when needed. I try to sneak in and do marriage licenses because it's my favorite part of recording. In the elections, I was working in cross-training into voters registration and felt pretty comfortable with that. And then I had the idea that I was going to go ahead and run up for auditor, so I stepped back, and I am not training in the elections or voters registration at this point. However, before that, I was very familiar with the process and what has to happen and who to go to when something, you have questions or what you need to do. So, thank you.
Okay, commissioners, we'll start with Sally this time. How would you better communicate
and work with the sheriff's office for budget necessities, such as old, inadequate, and worn out patrol cars, or the jail being in a state that is unsafe. Also technology and communication upgrades.
Boy, the car situation sounds like it's real typical.
Gotta put it close.
Okay. The car situation sounds really typical all the way through the counties. Cities are having problems with vehicles breaking down. It's hard. That's all I've got to say. It is very hard when you're dealing with worn down equipment. There needs to be better communication. Maybe there needs to be changes in schedules to where we can get the cars to last a little bit longer. I don't know what they have for maintenance. That's probably a big issue there. Technology, I think they have things in plan now to change their, all of their technology there at the jail. I am really deficit in this question. Thank you.
Patrol cars cost currently about $34,000 a piece. I think patrol cars currently cost about $34,000 a piece. That's just for a bare car. And we've been buying these cars and replacing them as the budget will allow. We also have to consider the fact that to maintain a stable force of officers, that the street officers come first, and the patrol, there's no sense in having more cars and not enough officers. And then when we have to deal with union contracts, that always weighs on the budget. County has 9 union contracts. I believe in the sheriff's office we just had 2. Excuse me. As far as communication is concerned, that's a whole different bailiwick. Central Services works within the courthouse. Central Services also takes care of their patrol car radios, or not radios, but computers. Then we have radio technicians that take care of their radios. And we have dispatch that is Mike Warden, and that is our complete 911 system, our complete communication system. We've been pouring money into that for the last 3 years. We have a contingency program working to communicate with broadband for the 4 northern tier counties. We rebuilt McClure Mountain 2 years ago. We rebuilt Tunk Mountain last year. So it's an ongoing process. A lot of this stuff is, timing out, becoming obsolete. So you have to manage your money very, very carefully. And we're fortunate. We've got good people in all those positions, and they care about the dollars and prioritize and make sure that things get spent, and they care for your tax dollars and do the best bang for the buck that they can.
Reset your time, Jim, because you had microphone problems.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, for the prosecuting attorney, as prosecutor, how and what are you doing to protect children who are victimized?
Once again, in juvenile justice, whether it's dealing with victims or defendants or what it may be, it's our duty as adults to protect children. Okay, the world's really a big playground. It's adults' job to make sure kids have a safe place to play. Period. The way that we're currently dealing with juveniles is through pretty much a penal system. Punishment, punishment, punishment. If you are familiar with Room 1 in Met How, they also are trying to deal with this. One of the big areas where kids start to fall into this criminal path, if you will, starts with no criminal activity, really. It starts with truancy. Okay, our prior way of dealing with truancy was to prosecute kids. The law's changed on that. That's why we have truancy boards. So when dealing with children, the best way to get a hold of a kid and get his attention is, once again, environment. Help children get into good environments. There's a stat you probably don't know. If a nurse visits a home that has domestic violence in it, just twice a week, that domestic violence rate drops 90% because there's someone watching. If a teacher visits a home twice a week from 0 to 5, there's a 95% chance that that kid will stay in school till 15, most likely 19. These are ways to prevent crime before it even happens. Okay? You do it with community. Everyone get involved, not just prosecutors. We need your help. Nurses, teachers, everyone. That's how we help children.
So here's the problem. None of that was about victims. And this is one of my big concerns. My concern is victims. That was all about defendants. The prosecutor has zero authority to send nurses and teachers into people's houses. Zero authority to pull kids out of those houses. What do? I handle every single child sex case that comes through the office. I have for years. I handle every single serious child abuse case. Done that for years. I work with these kids one-on-one. I take time, hours of my day sometimes, to talk to them. Not just about the case. I mean, the case is why the kid is there. But that's not the only way we can help them. We need to talk to them about school, talk to them about brothers and sisters, get them comfortable, let them know that we care. Let them know there are people out there that they can go to when they need help. I work with CPS very closely. When I have a review case, a lot of times I'll contact CPS. Hey, what do you know? We are sister agencies. We can share certain information. So we will communicate back and forth so that we can work together to do what is best for that kid. Sometimes, unfortunately, and this is where CPS is a huge benefit to these kids, sometimes it is worse to prosecute a case because that victim has to go through that process. And I've had to make those horribly difficult decisions. Usually, we can figure out a way to resolve the case for the trial. We can figure out a way to help the kid. But a lot of the times, charging some cases is going to put that kid through something they are not ready for. So what we do is we get them services, we get them a victim advocate, we get them community-based advocate systems so that we can help the kid, not just prosecute the case. I mean, we want to put that person in prison, but we want to help that kid.
So I have a two-part question actually here. It's for sheriff and prosecutor. So I'll let the prosecutors answer since the microphone's down this way, and then I'll move to the sheriff. So it says for both sheriff and prosecutor candidates. Number one, what is your professional/personal opinion on the gun law? I-1639, do you think it infringes on your constitutional rights? And then the second question, do you believe in prosecution or rehabilitation for first-time offenders?
Okay, so I've gone over a ton of legislative things. Remind me which one 1639 is.
For the background, and then control your controlled weapons permit for any mental state of
Okay,
anxiety.
yeah, okay. So here's my stance, and this is actually general for the Second Amendment. So I have no problem with guns. I have guns. Pretty much, not everybody, but most people in this county do. My concern is making sure that people who have guns know how to use them safely. It doesn't mean that every regulation is an infringement. This is my opinion. Every regulation is an infringement on the Second Amendment. We have reasons that felons can't possess firearms. We have reasons that mentally ill people should not possess firearms. There are procedures in place for that. Some of them I'm in agreement, some I'm not, frankly. And what was the second question? Oh, two parts.
Do you believe in prosecution
or rehabilitation for first-time offenders?
Depends. Depends on the crime. If the first time offense is a sex offense or a violent offense or something like that, I don't believe in rehabilitation. They can get rehabilitated in prison. If it's a low-level property crime or something like that, first we have to remember that not everybody's ready for rehabilitation. Not everybody with a chemical dependency problem is ready to say, okay, I need help. If they're not ready for help, we can't help them. But if somebody is ready for help, if it's a straight possession case or something like that, if it's a low-level property crime and treating them will help them, we all win. But they have to be ready for help. We know a lot of people deal drugs to support their habit. I kind of put them in a different category. And you can ask me about that afterwards.
I would vote no on 1639. I've read it. There are some regulations in 1639 that I believe do violate your constitutional rights. One of them is everyone's required to lock up their guns. Now, that part may be constitutional infringement. But the problem is to check that. The law gives police officers authority to knock on your door because you'll be registered with your weapons and your semi-automatics, because those have to all go on a list. And without a warrant, they can just say, I want to check your safety mechanisms. Okay? The law does not say they need to get a warrant first, so the way I read it was they could just knock on your door. That's a problem. That's a problem to me because I believe in the Bill of Rights for all citizens. As a Republican, I believe in individual liberty as long as it's not infringing on others. So if you're not doing anything wrong and it's in your home, I mean, the police officer's office essentially is in their car now. You could sit in your car and get a warrant in 20 minutes. There's no reason to go around. And so I think the law is poorly written and it needs to be voted no. As far as the
Do you believe in prosecution or rehabilitation for first-time offenders?
my opponent and I actually agree on this. It would depend on the crime. It would depend on the individual. It depends on the number of factors. This is exercising discretion again, trying to figure out what to do. You take a life, I can't, I've lost a son. You take a life, you don't get your kid back. Okay, it just doesn't happen. So there's not much you can do as far as discretion. It's not. But with low-level offenders and the cost of incarceration and the return on investment with 67% recidivism rate, absolutely, we need to try. We need to try other methods as much as possible.
Okay, so we're gonna ask the same thing to the sheriff. Do you want me to restate the question, Tony?
No. Okay, so I'll start off with, personally, I love to hunt, I love the outdoors, I love to collect guns, I love to shoot guns. I wish I had more guns. I strongly support the Second Amendment. I do not want anybody coming into my home telling me how to store my guns in my house. That's my house. I store my guns safely, I keep my guns up, I have small children. I take my children out shooting. They know how to operate guns. I think it's all about training and all about that. And storing them, not where they can get a hold of them and things like that. I don't think I should have to put a trigger lock on my gun in my home because my gun is there to protect my home. I don't need to have to take the lock off to protect my home. So I don't agree with this personally at all. Professionally, we don't have the staff to go and knock on everybody's door and check to see that you're storing your guns right. I don't have the time, we don't have the staff, we don't have the funding, we don't have the budget to go door to door for 40-some thousand citizens in Okanogan County and check to make sure their guns are stored properly. So I don't agree with this law at all on both sides. As far as first-time offenders, we're right back to the same, it depends. Is the first-time offense shoplifting at the IGA, or is the first-time offense a felony lewd, and we hurt somebody? It's been my stance my entire career. Prosecutors talk to us all the time. They'll call over and they'll say, what do you think about this case? This is what we're going to do. We're going to take a trial. We're going to settle this way. My question back to them is always, what does the victim think? If the victim is okay with how they handle the case, who am I to say how they handle their case? Because that is who we're working for in the end, is that victim. I already did my job. As long as I didn't do something to make it to where they couldn't do their job, and the deputies didn't do something to make it to where they couldn't adjudicate it, then we don't worry about that. As long as the victim is taken care of and the victim is made whole, that's what we need to focus on in that.
So the simple answer to 1639 for me is no, I do not support that. And I don't need to go on and mirror all the reasons why, because I think all three of these men have already said that. I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm not in favor of anybody, government, your own personal feelings, telling me how many guns I should have, or whether I should have 10 shotguns or 2, whether I can own 50 bullets or only 5. So the answer to that simply is no for me. And I would also point out, when you take a look at these initiatives, people really need to sit down and read them and look at them word for word. There's a huge difference in just a word. There's a huge difference in should or shall, must or may, could or would. And so when you read 1639 and you read everything else, make sure that you read those words carefully before you actually vote on them. Must means you will. You have to. Shall means what? Maybe it means something different to me than it means to you. So I encourage everybody to read those before you vote so you actually know what you're voting for. The other question was either prosecution or rehabilitation. Again, I can't mirror what these three men just said. I agree with the same thing. The RCW is this thick. It's full of laws. I couldn't possibly just pick one out of those and say, well, I agree for prosecution. It depends. It really does. Nobody's going to agree to rehabilitate a murderer. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the crime.
Okay, I was asked if anybody wants a 5-minute break or if you guys want to just keep going. Consensus? Keep going? Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so this is for the audit. So we'll start with, it's for Randy specifically. And so it asks, you have financial experience, please explain in detail. But then also it asks, for both auditors, what specific funds and departments are you in direct control of? Name, fund and department.
Okay, family budget, that's gonna be the first thing. We all have been through tough times. We all have to make tough decisions. Our family budget is the most important budget you can ever deal with. You know exactly how much you have coming in, how much you got to go out. That is where a lot of my experience comes through. As assistant manager at Domino's Pizza, my duty was also logging and dealing with the daily reports of the amount of money that we brought in, how much went to the delivery people, how much was tips, how much was expenses, and so I do have exposure to that. Am I a financial officer? Have I spent 19 years in a financial office locked away behind a door? No. I am a resident. I am just like you. I am somebody who cares about our county, somebody who wants to be involved, who wants to check, who wants to investigate, who wants to make sure that our county is being ran the way we want it to be. So this question is definitely one-sided, and I appreciate that. It does expose my weaknesses. I am not a financial officer spending 19 years working with finances. I am very good with math. I was accelerated in the 5th grade ahead of my whole class. There were 6 of us that spent the rest of our years from 5th grade through their senior year, advanced 1 year, basically teaching ourselves each math class, including calculus. So I am very good at math. I am very good at working by myself, and I'm very good at solving problems. Is this something that we need at the county? Yes. We need somebody that's just you and I. We don't need somebody who has already got the financial wizardry to hide something. We need somebody as an auditor who's going to question, who's going to investigate, and who's going to find these answers, and as I've promised, put those out for everybody to see.
Can you repeat the part?
Okay, so it said, what specific funds and departments are you under the direct control of? And then name the fund and department.
Sure. So the county auditor directly is in control of 3, 2 that are part of current expense and 1 that's a separate miscellaneous fund. One is the general auditor, which includes the auditor, the chief deputy, finance, reporting, portions of reporting, and licensing. Then there's the second department, which is elections, which is its separate, elections and voters registration. And then the third one is called MARC, which in the RCWs is called the auditor's O&M. And those funds are specifically for the preservation of reporting documents.
Thank you. Okay, now back to the commissioners. Yeah, we'll start with you. Is keeping our county hospitals important to you? If so, how could you help with this? If not, what is your idea on our hospitals?
Well, as probably all of you know, all three hospitals in the county have been at one time or another on registered warrants. And it got to be to the point, at one point, where our treasurer had to put her foot down and tell these hospitals, I'm not a bank. You know, you guys, I'm a stopgap measure. So you guys need to have fiscal responsibility in your own organizations. And we've seen a lot of administrations come and go in all three hospitals. I can tell you, you probably saw this in the paper, but it's been in the works for about a year now. All three hospitals are working together. Two of them are talking about merging administrations. That would be a big savings. And actually, at the time that it was first floated to us, all three hospitals were thinking about having one administrator. Now, would that complicate things for the county? Not necessarily. There are some counties that do have one single hospital district. We have three. So there are lots of ways that we could streamline these hospitals and make them more efficient. Everyone has to have an emergency room door, but not every single one of them has to have an MRI at the cost of $350,000. You know, you could split the duties up. You know, you could put a mammogram at Tonasket, an MRI at Brewster, or some of these other sophisticated technological things that they have to work with. Well, if every single hospital has to buy one from themselves, that redundancy does not make running a hospital efficient, especially the way we are in rural counties. So there's been some ideas floated around. I think there's a lot of them that are going to be very good. And Leah's holding her feet to the fire, so they can't just come and grab registered warrants wherever they want, and I commend her for that.
Okay, so hospitals are pretty dear to me. I lost my daughter here a month ago to the Houston Methodist Hospital in Texas. And there it is, the biggest hospital in Texas, and they were having financial difficulties. So it's not a problem. Finances are not a problem for just rural hospitals. It's nationwide, all the hospitals. There is a bill in Washington, D.C., sitting in committee, and it has for 2 years. And it's to give 105% Medicaid reimbursement to rural hospitals, which would be a very good deal for hospitals like ours. It'll boost just enough money to keep them going better. Hospitals are great to have in our communities because they bring in outside money. It's new money to the area. It's the insurances that's paying the bills. For the Tonasket Hospital, they're making more than $25 million is in their budget. That's a big deal in Orville and Tonasket. 230 people or families, I should say, are supported by just the Tonasket Hospital and its services. There's mammograms in all three hospitals. I think OMAC is the only one with an MRI, but they could work together more and provide better services. But I don't want to see any of the hospitals close or shut down services. We need it. It's already a long distance from Chesaw to go to the Tonasket Hospital. Okay, so they're important for our economy and for our health.
Okay, prosecuting attorney. Do you support the conviction of a DUI and a drug court?
I don't think that is. Contribution, maybe? Contribution, you can't read their handwriting. Do you support the contribution of a drug and DUI court? Continuation. I think that was your question. Do you support the continuation of DUI and drug court?
The drug court, good idea. The DUI court's a good idea. These are the things that can be done. These are different ways to deal with cases for low-level offenders. They get them treated. I would actually add to our current drug court program. From my understanding, is it's a back end. It's a last resort program. The other jurisdictions that I've practiced in Maryland and DC also have a front end one, and that is for the first-time offender. There's no reason to not try up front the first time, and if you fix them, you'll honestly about 30 to 40% that will actually successfully complete the first time. It's not high, but that's still 3 to 4 people out of 10 that aren't coming back. And then on the back end, they have that the final drug court. DUI court is a great idea too. I would go further. I would actually create a mental health court. We have the highest rate of non-vets and other veterans in the state. There's no reason to criminalize their behavior. We can have a mental health court. There's also, I want with the juvenile justice system to create a youth court where youths actually run it. It creates civics, responsibility for the youth. They participate with each other, they partner, cooperate, build relationship. This is how you improve the community. So therapeutic courts, I think that's really what we're talking about here, are a great idea. They're a great alternative to prison. Prison, although that we talk about rehabilitation, it's usually just punishment. They took all programs out of those prisons long ago. So there's not schools like there used to be and things like that. With DUI court, drug courts, things like that, we can address the needs of the individual and help them more. So they're great programs.
So, unfortunately, some of that's wrong information about how a drug court works. It's not a back end program. People are entered into this program at the outset of their case on one of two bases. If they are a first-time offender or a low-level offender, they're often eligible for what's called diversion-based. If they complete the drug court problem, their case is dismissed. There are nationally recognized and followed standards that our court, as well as pretty much every legitimate drug court in the country, follows. Some of them are post-conviction. It means they still plead guilty, but if they complete the program, they get what we call an exceptional sentence down, a credit for time served. Sometimes it's a couple of years off of a prison sentence, but it's not a back-end program. I actually looked into a mental health court a couple of years ago. I go to the National Drug Court Conference. I went this last year. I took the mental health court track. The problem there is funding. You have to exhaust all federal funding before you can even apply for state funding. The other issue that we run into is the interplay between mental illness and what is called competency, which is something that most people know nothing about. But it has to do with whether an offender can actually be tried for a case. And a lot of our defendants with mental health concerns also have issues of competency. And you can't enter somebody into a program if they're not competent. So it's not as simple as just opening a court. Youth court, it may sound great. I promise you, there's no resources for it. I know that Mr. Noma has said before that it's at no cost to the taxpayer. Any court that you establish has costs. You need a prosecutor, a defense attorney, court staff, a courtroom, a judge, in order to do all these things. So the problem is that all these other courts, in theory, I would love to have a mental health court. But right now, we can't, unfortunately. We deal with those on an individual basis, and we craft special resolutions for those. Thank you.
Sheriff, what is your opinion of bringing back the reserve program, the officer program, to help get more officers out and cover more areas? I know you guys are pretty limited in how many officers you have, and you have a wide area. Or if you are not in agreement with that, how would you get more officers hired?
I'll ask Jim for more money.
I know the answer.
Yeah, right. There's,
Oh, yeah, should we have Jim answer?
I'll go ahead and answer that first. The only way to hire more officers is to have more money in the budget. And so, we live within our means within the budget. If we had a bigger budget to hire more officers, we would, but we don't. So we work with what we have. I am in favor of a reserve program. Currently, I believe we have 2 reserves. Well, we actually have 3. One, not because he wants to be a reserve. I just don't think that he's ever removed his name. And we do have 2 other reserves within our office. But our reserve program needs both, and we need to have somebody, a sergeant, or somebody from the administration, or a deputy who's willing to step up and do the reserve programs. It's not as easy as somebody just coming in, sitting down with a deputy or a sergeant and being trained for 2 hours, and then you give them a uniform and a car and you tell them to go out and work. So I am in favor of bolstering the reserve program, but at the same time, we have to be honest. If we're going to have a reserve program, those reserves need to work for the sheriff's office. We shouldn't have reserves who are just a reserve in name only. If you want to be a reserve for the sheriff's office, you should spend some time. You should either be a level 1 or a level 2. You should go out there and you should work if that's really what you want to do. So I am in favor of it, but right now our reserve program is very weak.
Okay, so I also am in agreement. We aren't going to get more money from our officers. We need to answer that one right away. That's where we're at. We have the staffing that we have with the budget that we have to work with. So as far as hiring more full-time, that's going to be really difficult to do that. What we do have is looking into the reserve program. The last time that we tried to run a reserve program, this was set up. We tried to work in partnership to save money with Wenatchee Valley College. I was working with them so that most of this training could be done online, except for these skills things like driving, shooting, things like that. The problem with it is the sheriff's office supplies all the instructors. They supply all of the costs. The last group of people that were coming in were only interested in working for the cities. So the sheriff's office was training people to work for somebody else. Our reserve program died at that point because it was not cost effective for us to train for other people. Anybody running a business isn't going to train somebody to go. Burger King doesn't train McDonald's employees. It doesn't work that way. We didn't have the interest in the sheriff's office reserve program. They were interested to work for the city of Brewster, the city of Omak, or somewhere else. And that's where we just, our reserves have gone away. Another problem with that is having reserves to get more coverage. The level, first step is they ride with a deputy. So you have a 2-man car. Once they become a level 1 reserve, they're riding in a car. We've already touched on it. We don't have cars. So it's really difficult just to get this program going. It's a great idea, and I love the interest from the public to come help us in the reserve program, and having that, I would support it. But where is it going to come from is the answer that we need to ask first. And are people actually going to come to the sheriff's office and work as reserves, or are we training for somebody else? So that's what we need to look at. There's a lot of moving parts in order to get that going again. With what we have right now, we have a couple retired deputies that are reserved basically in name right now. We don't have anybody that's actually coming out and doing any reserve work. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, so this is for the auditors. The question is actually for Randy Gates with a follow-up for Carrie. So it says for Randy, if in your statement that you were the vehicle license supervisor for 10 years, what was Charlene Groom's position for the first 3.5 years of your employment? Also, it says Charlene left the position in 2011. Also, has it escaped your memory that supervisory duties were removed from the position you held for approximately 6.5 years? The job description was rewritten in 2015 with you having to refuse signing it. You have stated you will reduce or come under budget. Can you tell us what the 2018 appropriations are and specifically how you will reduce it.
First off, licensing supervisor is a duty required by the Department of Licensing. There must be a licensing supervisor within the county auditor's office by job title at all times. So that is when I quote that as a Department of Licensing supervisor. It is correct, Charlene was the licensing supervisor when I first took office. She made it very plain and very obvious and very willingly to train me and to show me her duties and to really be her backup. And I really applaud her and loved her for that. She's a great lady, and I had the greatest time of my life working with Charlene. We were a great team. What was the second part?
You stated you reduced or came under budget.
Okay, I'm going to run the auditor's office just as I've been running my campaign. I have not spent a lot of funds. You do not see a lot of signage out there. I believe that the residents' money belongs to them and in their pocket and in the family to help their family. I don't go door to door asking for money. Most of the monies that have been spent in my campaign has come from my family. I believe that by running a tight budget, I'm not trying to buy your vote, I'm trying to earn your vote. So instead of buying signage, I'm going out into the communities. I'm going to Brewster, I'm going to Tenaskia, to Twist, to Winthrop, to Nespion. And I'm standing there with my sign, waving and encouraging people to come talk to me. And I think that by earning your vote, it is way more powerful than by buying your vote. Recently, I've understood that the county auditor's office had the recording and licensing convention. 4 people were missing. That cost a lot of money, and during that time, we're lacking employees to help you with the office. Through Department of Licensing, a lot of that can be done online, and it is available online. There's sub-agents throughout the county who do not get to go to conferences that are able to keep their certifications.
Okay, so this is for the county commissioner. Actually, Carrie, did you have anything to follow up with that?
Sorry.
It was kind of just it was for Randy, but then it also said, when Randy asked Carrie for her comments, about reducing the budget or how the appropriations are specifically reduced.
Sure. I believe you're hearing a theme here that there isn't a single department that feels they have extra money. The auditor's office is also in the same boat. The number one thing always is budgets, budgets, budgets. The conference that was mentioned, the conference is the only opportunity for people who are certified, and we're required to have certified people doing elections and certified people to do licensing, is offered once a year, and it's required to go. You cannot get all your CEUs online or through DOL or through the Secretary of State's office. So yes, it's very hard for us. We're a small department. We have only 7 or 8 employees. And yes, we are in the process of cross-training and becoming certified in multiple different areas. The hope is for that is to better serve you, our customers. But also what it does is it does hurt us when we need to send people to conferences. However, they're not super expensive, and we always try to go to the ones that are on this side of the state, not the west side of the state, if at all possible. Thank you.
Prosecutor, or for county commissioner. Tim, you want to go first? Okay.
So this is a question. It says, when you enter your role as an elected official, you will sign an oath of office. How will you assure this oath is precisely followed? If you have served a previous term, how would you rate how you've done in implementing the elements in your oath? Please give examples.
Well, the oath of office is for all elected officials. We swear allegiance to the United States Constitution. You swear allegiance to the state constitution, and you follow those processes. And the Board of County Commissioners is the legislative body. So a lot of people say, you know, what do you do as a county commissioner? Well, we're in charge of the money. We have, 64 or 65 junior taxing districts. We have 9 school districts. We have 18 fire districts. We have 3 hospital districts. And 275 employees in the county. All of this falls within the purview of the county commissioners under budget. So to give a specific example of how we carry out the oath, I would just say I'm basically a constitutional person. And that's how I think and act, and that's how I legislate as required by the county for our mission.
Okay, so he's right, you gotta swear to uphold the Constitution and the state constitution. And so what you have to do is, honesty is first. You've gotta be transparent, you gotta treat people fairly, you gotta, there's a lot of things involved with it. Of course, there's the RCWs that hang over your head, like those are the rules you have to go by. They're not rules, they're the laws. That's the revised code of Washington, and they control what you have to do. Was there more to that question? Okay, that was it.
Brandon? In addition to trial work, how are you qualified on administrative, civil aspects of prosecutor's office?
So I have a general understanding of a lot of the civil aspects of the job. Before I was appointed as the prosecutor, I was the chief criminal deputy. So I didn't work in civil. We have different divisions. But when I knew the switch was coming, I started working with our civil deputy. So I've become familiar with forfeiture actions, with some of our land use things, comprehensive plan, things like that. Am I well versed in every single aspect of it? No, nobody can ever know every single aspect of it. We have a really smart chief civil deputy who handles the majority of that. He keeps me updated. When there's something new we need to learn, we learn it together, frankly. I have my experience in criminal law. That's 90% of our office, frankly, is criminal prosecution, not the civil side. The civil side is really a small fraction of what we do. We are the advisors to the commissioners. We don't make the ultimate decisions, we advise them. And in order to advise, we do our research. And whether that's our chief civil deputy or myself, we do that research so we can properly advise them.
When I went into private practice in 2010, naturally, in addition to criminal defense, I did civil litigation. So in Maryland, DC, and here, I've done breach of contract cases, land use cases, personal injury cases, complex construction cases with Alex and Thomas and Justice, just about every type of civil case you can deal with. So I have a well-rounded in civil experience in addition to criminal procedure. Anytime you don't know something, that's exactly what lawyers do. We're critical thinkers. If there's an issue, we do research and get the answer. As far as
Civil aspects of prosecutor's office is, in addition to trial work, how are you qualified on administrative, civil aspects of the prosecutor?
So, my opponent is correct. You are the advisor to the county. What I can promise the citizens is anytime the county needs advice, we will be there. And that's no matter the issue, whether it's civil, criminal, whatever it is, because that is our job. Thank you.
Okanogan County. And then also there was another one about, as a sheriff, how would you reinforce the DARE project for teens? We're gonna kind of double up. We've got one more question for the county commissioner, and then we'll probably wrap it up. So, do we want to give them 4 minutes, Nora, because it's kind of a two-part question?
I think that sounds good.
Okay. So, addressing the property crimes and DARE project for teens.
Okay, so kind of like I stated at the beginning, the issue of investigating crimes falls on every deputy in the sheriff's office. If we relegate that down to 1 or 2 people doing it, what happens is we get everybody thinking it's not my job. It's somebody else's job. We don't need the not my job ideas. We need somebody who goes in, they're going in to investigate the case, and they're taking the ownership in helping the stakeholders of this county deal with the property crimes. We need to work with the community, we need to work with the citizens so that people are willing to share the information with us. Let us know where these people are going, let us know what's going on with this, and get our deputies trained to go and know where the crime problems are at and investigate those problems. They need to be, if they need to be prodded along, if they need to be trained, what needs to be going on so that they have the abilities and the desires and attitude to go after criminals. Not think it's not my job. My job is simply doing paper service. My job is simply stopping cars. It's not. As deputies, we investigate everything. We do everything from civil paper service to homicide investigations. And we all need to take that ownership and go into it with the mindset that this is our case and we need to take care of this victim. That's what we need to do. Having a specialized program, we don't have the budget for that. We're not Spokane, we're not King County, we're not Pierce County. We can't compartmentalize every investigation throughout our sheriff's office. We've never been able to do that. We did have a small program going on, and they worked really well because of those people. They were doing that under my squad before they were assigned to the side, and they were doing just as well, either assigned to a specialty or whether they were doing it as a patrol deputy. They were more well-rounded and more available as a patrol deputy to do that. Having them train people how to do it is the best way to do that and utilize the resources that we have. If we keep compartmentalizing everybody off to the side, just like when I work traffic, I only work traffic. It really narrowed me down to what I was doing at that point in time, although I was willing to help in every other aspect that came on. As far as the DARE program, I don't know that we're going to open up a DARE program. I want to get into the schools. I want to get our school safety going, NRA School Shield program. I've been trained in that and get that going. The DARE program focuses on an age group that we're kind of past the age that we need to be focusing on. The kids are already involved in drugs by the time we're targeting with that curriculum. So the DARE program specifically is targeting the problem too late. They've already gotten into that. I'm a drug recognition expert and I train people on the use and abuse of drugs and the impairment on that. And through that and talking with people while I'm talking to them, doing an evaluation on that person, asking them when they got involved in drugs. It was well before the 6th grade, quite a few of them, which is where that program targets. So if they're already into it, the DARE program is basically, we're talking to people that are already using, and they need to be in a different program. They're in a substance abuse situation already, and teaching them how to avoid it and abstain from it it's too late. So we're addressing it, the problem after the problem has already occurred. That's like going to change your oil after you've blown the engine. It's not going to do any good. So we need to focus on getting in touch with these kids before they get into that. So having a specific program isn't so necessary as having positive contacts and getting our deputies into the schools and talking with these kids and having positive interactions with them, most of the time with law enforcement. When we show up, something bad has happened in that family. Whether we're arrested somebody, there's been a domestic violence, been broken into, whatever it is, either it's not a good day for them and we're showing up to a negative situation, and we need to create more positive situations where we're dealing with kids that want to come up and talk with us, just like with the community that want to come up and talk to us, so that we're involving all the stakeholders in this community to help with the problems that we have in our community. So it's not just falling on 4 or 5 people or 30 deputies or the cities to take care of that on their own, to help the community.
So I don't know who asked the question, but it's a great question. When the primary started, there were 6 candidates who ran for sheriff. 5 of us were law enforcement officers, 1 of us was a firefighter. I can't speak for the firefighter, but I can speak for all 5 of us. During the primary at the forums, we were asked, what the top 3 things were in the county. And the top 2 things for every one of the candidates were drugs and property crimes. And I've told everybody this, and it's not really a joke, it's true. Those things go hand in hand. Nobody ever broke into your house and stole your TV to watch it. They don't. That's not a joke, that's the truth. Nobody stole your car or stole your gun so they could take your truck and your gun out and go hunting. People break into your house, people violate you so that they can sell those things for pennies on the dollar to support their drug habit. In 2015 and 2016, we had very high numbers of property crimes. In 2017, we created a PROACT team. That PROACT team was a 2-man team, as Tony said. Both of those individuals targeted just property crimes. In 2017, out of the 4 years that I've been with the Sheriff's Office, having that team there, we had the lowest number of property crimes in this county. That PROACT team was disbanded by the sergeants for the Sheriff's Office. It was left up to them to vote to return those 2 people back to the street and put them on a squad, or to maintain them. Every one of them unanimously chose to put those 2 people back out on the street. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for sheriff. I don't believe that's a decision the sergeant should make. I believe that's a decision that the sheriff should make. In 2018, today, our property crime numbers are higher than they've ever been since I've been at the sheriff's office. Why? I believe those 2 men who worked on the PROACT team had a direct correlation with the number of people that were in jail and those who were out committing property crimes. That will be one of the first things I do as sheriff. We will have a property crimes unit. We will have a 2-man PROACT team. And I don't think that's compartmentalizing anything. Every single law enforcement officer that ran for sheriff this year, 5 of us, all said the exact same thing. That's not compartmentalizing the sheriff's department. That's targeting a specific group of people who commit property crimes and putting them in jail. The second question about DARE, I think you have to look at that more than just DARE. I think that the sheriff's office has to be involved in all kinds of youth programs, not just DARE program. And the DARE program is a good program, and it was a good program. But there are a lot of good youth programs. Peer pressure programs, the Bully Busters program, the DARE program, the Challenge program. There's all kinds of programs that law enforcement should be involved in. For 3.5 years now, I am the only person within the sheriff's office that went to the school lunch program that I started at the elementary school. The only one. If law enforcement officers really want to make an impact on the youth, we need to get involved with the youth. I started that program at the Okanogan Elementary School, and I show up there every Thursday religiously to have lunch with the kids. For 2 years in a row I did that. I will admit last year I did not show up every Thursday. This year I've only been there 1 time. But it's 1 time more than any other law enforcement officer at the sheriff's office has done. If we talk about doing something for you, show up and do it, just don't talk about it. We need to know what these kids know. A lot of the parents don't even know half of the things the kids know in school or learn in school. They don't even know what maths is. When a kid walks around and talks about maths, parents don't know what that means. Thank you.
One final question for the commissioners. It says, Jim, during this term of office, you supported transfer of ownership of federal public land and traveled widely to do so. Are you still promoting this concept? And then Sally, after he answers, how do you feel about this?
Transfer of public lands is a huge issue, and there's actual legislation. Ken Ivory is a senator from Utah, and what they're talking about is taking the ownership of federal lands and giving it back to the state. And the misnomer about this whole thing is that does not give the state or the county the authority to sell that land. What it does is it puts it back under local jurisdiction. If you draw a line down the Rocky Mountain Crest, say 15 western states and the rest of them, all these states, and we can use Okanogan County as an example, We only have 17% of our land that is a tax base for this county. 83% of it is federal or state ground. And they don't pay taxes, they pay payment in lieu of taxes, which is an infinitesimal amount compared to what it would be. If the jurisdiction and if you look west of the Mississippi, it's exactly the opposite. All of these states have 17, down as much as 2% is federal grant. All the rest of it is private, and that's their tax base. So they don't understand PILT. They don't understand what happens when we have to go back to Washington, D.C. and we say, well, we're here for our welfare check because, you know, they took our timber industry away from us. And if we had this land back and we could imagine at the state level with the counties, it would increase our tax base. And it's just an idea that's being floated, and there's several counties, several states that have signed on to it. The National Association of Counties has endorsed it, and the Republican Party on the national level has endorsed it.
Okay, so President Theodore Roosevelt, a Republican, made the Forest Service and the national parks to put aside land for the public to go to and see and to use, to walk on, to hunt, to do whatever. So that was a Republican president who put all these lands into that designation. I think we need to keep it as public land for the public, and it needs to be under federal oversight rather than turn it over to state. The state doesn't have money to run it. I think we can still log. We need to go back and deal with the spotted owl and realize that we've got too much fuel there in the woods and need to manage our forests. And then we could have more money, more tax money back at the county. This is how I feel. It needs to stay public land for the public.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. That's all of our questions for the candidates. I do invite you, there are some refreshments. If the candidates have any individual questions, you can ask them. I am asked to announce, it says meet your 12th district candidates. This will be on October 8th, starting at 6 p.m. and it'll be right here as well. You're all invited to that, and please pass the word on. So you're gonna meet the 12th district candidates, Leah. Okay, got it? Okay, thank you.